Hey there folks, and welcome into TK Power Sports. Right now we're going to count down the most affordable ATVs for 2025. And at the base end of the ATV market there are some bargains. So let's dive into it now. We're going to look at every single major brand and exactly how much you'll have to spend on one of their new units. Let's dive into the numbers now. I pulled pricing for both the US and Canada, so I'll give you both prices, and we are going to go in order from most expensive to least expensive ATV in the United States, which means we are going to start with the Suzuki King Quad 400. Now, if you go buy one of these new Suzukis, you'll be shelling out $6,999 US or $8,999 here in Canada. That's going to get you a 376cc single-cylinder engine. This ATV is 45.1 inches wide, and it does offer four-wheel drive and 25-inch tires. And those are important to pay attention to because as we go through the list, you're going to realize, no, at the base end, not all of these ATVs even have four-wheel drive. But yes, at the base end of Suzuki, you are getting four-wheel drive, 25-inch tires, and suspension travel at 6.7 inches in the front and in the rear. Now let's move up the list to the Polaris Sportsman 450. In the US, this model sells for $6,999. Here in Canada, it sells for $9,589, making it the most expensive on the list here in Canada. So for that money, you are getting a 499cc single-cylinder engine making 33 horsepower. This ATV is 48 inches wide, so much more like a full-size ATV, unlike that Suzuki I mentioned and some of the other ones on the list that are even smaller. And then, yeah, the Polaris also offers four-wheel drive. It has 8.2 and 9.5 inches of suspension travel in the front and rear, respectively, and 25-inch tires. So the Polaris might not be the cheapest option on the market, but it does offer quite a bit at the base end in terms of features. And there's one more ATV that also costs $6,999 in the US. That is the Cat Altera 450. In Canada, this thing sells for $8,499, and it uses a 433cc single-cylinder engine. Now, the Cat here is 44 inches wide. It offers four-wheel drive and 25-inch tires, and when it comes to suspension travel, you're talking 7.5 inches in the front and 7 inches in the rear. Now, Cat as a company is going through some rough times these days, so we'll have to see how they come through it. But yes, if you're looking for an affordable ATV, the Altera 450 is still out there. Next up is the Can-Am Outlander 500. This ATV is going to sell for $6,649 in the US or $8,999 here in Canada. This Outlander offers by far the biggest engine on this list. It's a 650cc single cylinder. Now, it's an interesting story here because the Outlander 500 and the Outlander 700 both use the same 650cc engine. Can-Am just rates it differently in each one of those units. So here in the Outlander 500, it makes 40 horsepower, and then if you step up to the Outlander 700, it makes more horsepower. So it's an interesting strategy. Can-Am just offers the one engine and then changes the outputs. Now, talking about size, this is also more of a full-size ATV, 47.6 inches wide. One important thing to note, though, is this base Outlander is just two-wheel drive. You have to step up to the next trim before you're going to get four-wheel drive. Suspension travel numbers are quite good with 9.75 inches in the front and 10.25 in the rear. And I did want to pull pricing for the cheapest four-wheel drive model. So in the States, you're talking about $73.49. In Canada, a little bit over $9,300. So yes, with four-wheel drive, like the Polaris offers, this Can-Am is actually the most expensive on the list, but to be fair to them, they have that base two-wheel drive model, and it is undercutting that Polaris by just a little bit. Now we slide on up to the next model, the Yamaha Kodiak 450. So the Kodiak 450 sells for $6,399 US or $9,399 in Canada. It offers a 421cc single-cylinder engine, and it has a width at 46.5 inches wide, so getting a little bit skinnier than the previous two models we talked about. Suspension travel, just okay, 6.7 inches in the front, 7.4 inches in the back. This model does offer four-wheel drive and 25-inch tires as well. The next two brands on the list might not be as mainstream as Polaris or Can-Am, but they do offer some value. So right now we're going to talk about the Argo XR 500, which sells for $6,299 US or $86.99 in Canada. It offers a 443cc single-cylinder engine. It's 48.4 inches wide, so very much a full-size ATV. It also has four-wheel drive, a front locker, just 24-inch tires, and 7.5 inches of suspension travel front and rear. So some really competitive features there, plus a pretty attractive price point. And moving up, the same story applies to this ATV, the CFMoto CForce 400 Classic. This is the base end of the CFMoto ATV lineup. In the States, this thing sells for $5,399. In Canada, $7,799. It offers a 400cc single-cylinder engine. It's just 44 inches wide, although it does have four-wheel drive, a locking front diff, 25-inch tires, and 7.5 inches of travel in the front and 8.5 inches of travel in the back. So again, a pretty competitive feature set at a good price point, which is what CFMoto is known for. Now finally, we're on to our top two models, and I do have to put this disclaimer out there. These are definitely a little bit smaller than everything else you've heard of on this list. They're not quite youth models, but they're also not full-size ATVs. They are firmly what you might call a mid-size ATV, and the price does reflect that. So first of all, we're going to talk about the Kawasaki Brute Force 300. This thing sells in the United States for $5,199. In Canada, $6,199. And not only is it physically smaller, coming in with a width at 42.5 inches and a length at 75.5 inches, this thing has just a 271cc single-cylinder engine, so a significantly smaller power plant as well. This Kawasaki is also just two-wheel drive. It only has just over 5 inches of travel in the front and the rear. It only packs 22-inch tires. That's the first on the list with just 22s. And it is still carbureted. This is not even a fuel-injected engine. You're still rocking a carburetor. But with all that in mind, that's why you can get a machine at such an attractive price point, just over $5,000 in the States. And now we get to number one, and that crown in the United States anyways goes to Honda. The Honda Fourtrax Recon, to be exact, which has an MSRP at $4,799 US. Now for that money, you're getting a 229cc single-cylinder engine, so it is the smallest engine on this list. It's also the smallest machine on this list with a width at just 40.7 inches. So you got to keep these things in mind. It's the most affordable, but it's also the smallest and least powerful. This Honda is also just two-wheel drive. It packs 22-inch tires. Travel is 5.1 inches in the front and just 4.9 in the rear, so not a lot of suspension there. And it's also carbureted. So you have to give Honda credit for offering us such an affordable ATV, but keep in mind all of those features I mentioned before you rush out, because this is such a good deal. Oh, and if you noticed, I didn't mention the Canadian price. That's because Honda Canada doesn't sell the Fourtrax Recon. We don't get this most affordable option. Here in Canada, the Honda ATV lineup starts with the Rancher TRX 420, and that thing costs a little over $10,000. So yes, for Canadians, your cheapest model is going to be that Kawasaki Brute Force, and then for Americans, by far, the cheapest model is the Honda Fourtrax Recon. Well, folks, we have come to the end of this one, and I am happy to see that for between $5,000 and $7,000, there's a lot of different ATVs to choose from. Whether you just need basic transportation and two-wheel drive will work for you, or you need something a bit bigger, a bit beefier with four-wheel drive, you can find all of that in this price range. So nice to see there's some good deals out there, and of course that's a really great price point to bring home a brand new machine with a warranty. So yeah, that's it for this one. Now of course I want to hear from you. Drop in the comments, let me know about all of the prices you heard in this video, and hey, do you own any of these ATVs? I would love to hear your feedback on them. As always, while you're down below, leave us a comment. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see like this one in the future, and then hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member, and come right back here to TK Power Sports to see what we're testing next. See ya.